brothers and sisters of the soul, seekers, wanderers, and lovers of truth. Today, I invite you into the sacred sound of longing, a sound not made by the lips, but by the spirit. A sound that comes from the opening verses of Maulana Jalaluddin Rumi's Masnavi, where he writes, listen to the reed how it tells a tale, complaining of separations. This is not just poetry. This is the cry of the soul, your soul and mine, echoing through time, through struggle, through life itself. Rumi begins his ocean of wisdom not with certainty, but with a cry. The reed flute, torn from the reed bed, makes music only through its emptiness. And that, my friends, is where we begin. Not with answers, but with the ache. Because inner satisfaction is born not in having all things, but in remembering the one thing we've lost, our connection to the divine. We spend our lives chasing happiness, like it's somewhere outside of us. But Rumi reminds us, you are not missing anything in the world. You are missing your origin. That's why no achievement, no relationship, no wealth can quiet the soul's cry. It is not hungry for the world. It is hungry for home. The reed's lament teaches us that separation is not our enemy. It's our teacher. It is the sacred wound that leads us to healing. When we recognize the ache, we don't run from it. We listen to it. Because in that ache, there is guidance. There is a map. There is music. And so we walk the path of remembrance, of surrender, of love. Not to escape life, but to live it from a deeper center. Not to rise above pain, but to discover its hidden purpose. And slowly, as Rumi shows us, we move from being full of noise to becoming hollow like the reed, empty of ego, but filled with spirit. And that is when the divine breath begins to play through us. So what is inner satisfaction? It is not silence without sound. It is harmony within longing. It is to feel the ache and still be at peace. To be alone and yet not lonely. To walk through life not as a beggar of love, but as a bearer of it. Because when you hear the reed song within you, you remember who you are. One. The reed as the voice of the soul. Rumi begins with the reed's cry to symbolize the soul's deep yearning to return to its source. Inner satisfaction starts by acknowledging the pain of separation. 2. Separation as a sacred experience. The feeling of disconnection is not a failure. It's the first step toward union. Pain, in Rumi's philosophy, is the divine calling you back. 3. The world cannot fill the soul like the reed searching for its reed bed. We often look for satisfaction in the wrong places. The outer world cannot fill the inner void. 4. Listening to the lament within. Rumi invites us to listen, not just with ears, but with the heart. Inner satisfaction begins when we stop ignoring the voice within. 5. Emptiness as divine preparation. The reed can only make music when it is hollow. In the same way, we must be emptied of ego, pride, and false desires to receive divine peace. 6. Union through remembrance and love. Rumi teaches that remembrance, zikr, and divine love are the bridges from longing to union. Love connects the separated soul to its origin. 7. Becoming the instrument, not the player. True satisfaction is found when we allow the divine to express through us. Like the reed doesn't play itself, but carries the breath. 8. Living with longing and peace together. The ultimate spiritual maturity is to live in the world, feel the longing, and still be deeply satisfied, because you are connected to the eternal even while walking in the temporary. When Maulana Rumi begins the Masnavi with the line, listen to the reed, how it tells a tale. He is not merely introducing a musical instrument. He is unveiling the deepest metaphor of the human soul. The reed flute, or ney, is not just a symbol of sound, but of sorrow, of longing, of a deep inner ache that every soul carries. This is Rumi's call to spiritual awareness, to turn inward and listen not to the world's noise, but to the soul's cry. Every human being, whether aware of it or not, carries within them a quiet lament, a yearning, a homesickness for something beyond this world. But only those who dare to pause and listen can begin the journey toward true inner satisfaction. In a world overflowing with voices, opinions, demands, trends, and distractions, it becomes increasingly difficult to hear our own soul. We're trained to look outward, to achieve more, to acquire more, to prove more. Yet the soul speaks in stillness. It does not shout, it whispers. And Rumi reminds us that when we no longer fear silence, we can begin to hear the divine music that's been playing inside us all along. The lament within us is not there to make us feel hopeless. It exists to guide us back home. But guidance only comes to those who are quiet enough to receive it. Listening to the lament within means becoming honest with ourselves, admitting our dissatisfaction, our spiritual thirst, and the emptiness that no external thing can fill. Most of us numb this ache through distraction, with entertainment, with busyness, with false affirmations that we are fine. But Rumi encourages us not to cover the ache, but to befriend it. That longing inside you is not a weakness. It is the most sacred part of you. It's the echo of your origin, the tug of the beloved on the thread of your soul. When you listen deeply to that sorrow, it transforms into insight, into movement, into awakening. In the Sufi path, this inner listening is called asama, which literally means hearing. But it's not about sound, it's about presence. It is the practice of tuning in to the vibrations of the heart, to the divine breath that flows through our being. The reed flute plays not because it has power of its own, but because it allows the breath to pass through it. In the same way, when we become spiritually open, when we shed our inner noise, we allow divine wisdom to move through us. We begin to hear what has always been speaking, the soul's longing, the call of the divine, the invitation to come closer. And so, listening to the lament within is not an act of weakness. It is an act of courage. It is a choice to stop running, to stop pretending, and to start hearing the truth that rises from within. Rumi does not say, ignore the reed. He says, listen. Because when you truly listen, you realize the cry is not of despair. It is of remembrance. It is the soul saying, I know where I came from, and I want to return. And that is where the journey toward inner satisfaction truly begins. The reed, as described by Rumi, can only produce its soulful melody because it has been hollowed out. It has been emptied, stripped of its core, pierced with holes, and left bare. Yet, paradoxically, it is through this emptiness that the reed becomes capable of divine expression. This profound symbol teaches us that true spiritual music, true inner satisfaction, is born not from fullness, but from surrender. When we are full of our own ego, desires, and attachments, we leave no space for the divine to move through us. But when we allow ourselves to be emptied, not destroyed, but refined, we become instruments of something far greater than ourselves. In Rumi's spiritual philosophy, this emptiness is not a void to be feared, but a sacred preparation. The soul must go through a process of spiritual purification, much like the reed undergoes physical transformation before it can sing. The world often teaches us to accumulate more knowledge, more success, more control. But the mystic way, the path of the reed, teaches us to let go. To release the noise within us, the false identities, the illusions of self-sufficiency. This is not self-denial, it is self-awakening. By becoming empty of what is false, we make room for what is real. The breath of God, the presence of love, the light of truth. Rumi understood that the soul is most alive when it is most surrendered. And surrender is not weakness. It is the greatest form of strength. It takes immense courage to be hollow, to say, I don't know. I am not in control. I need something beyond myself. But just as the reed cannot play its song unless it is open, we cannot experience inner satisfaction until we are spiritually open. Open to guidance, to grace, to transformation. It is in emptiness that the soul becomes receptive. The world teaches us to resist vulnerability, but the spiritual path embraces it as the door to divine intimacy. There is a divine irony in Rumi's message. What the world calls emptiness, the mystic calls readiness. A reed full of its own wood cannot play a single note. But the hollow reed, stripped bare and surrendered, can sing melodies that stir the hearts of generations. Likewise, a person who is full of pride, bitterness, or the clamor of worldly ambitions may appear powerful, but they are silent in the language of the soul. Only when we allow ourselves to be purified, to be reduced to what is essential, can the true song of our spirit be heard. This is the secret of inner satisfaction, being played by the divine breath, not by our own will. So when life hollows you out, when pain strips you of your comfort or pride, remember Rumi's reed. What feels like loss may be preparation. What feels like emptiness may be the exact space the divine is preparing to fill. The mystic's emptiness is not lifeless. It is expectant, alive, full of potential. It is the womb of awakening. And when the breath of God flows through such a soul, the result is not despair, but music, not noise, but meaning. It is in that sacred emptiness that the soul begins to know peace, and that the deepest satisfaction silently takes root. In the Masnavi, Rumi frequently speaks of the soul's longing for the beloved, a longing that cannot be fulfilled by anything in the material world. The beloved in Rumi's mystical language represents the divine, the source of all creation, the center of every heart. The journey of the soul, according to Rumi, is one of constant return. We are all born into this world with a memory of our original union with the divine, and this memory is the driving force of our spiritual quest. The human experience, with all its suffering and joy, is marked by a deep, unspoken desire to return to the place of peace and love from which we came. But this return is not a literal journey. It is an inner journey, one that requires purification, surrender, and a willingness to let go of the illusions that keep us separated from the divine. The process of returning to the beloved begins with recognition. Just as the reed cut from the reed bed remembers its home, so too does the soul remember its divine origin. This memory is not always conscious. It is often hidden beneath the layers of ego, desires, and worldly attachments. But as we progress on the spiritual path, the soul's remembrance becomes clearer. The world in all its fleeting beauty is no longer enough to satisfy the deep ache within. The more we experience the impermanence of the material world, the greater our longing for the eternal, the beloved, becomes. This longing is not a void, but a direction. The soul is not aimlessly lost, but searching with purpose, searching for the return that will restore it to its true nature. Rumi suggests that this return is not a simple act of walking back into the divine, but a process of transformation. As the soul journeys toward reunion with the beloved, it must go through a purification process, shedding the layers of illusion, attachment, and ego. This is where Rumi's teachings on the necessity of suffering and longing come into play. The soul must experience the pain of separation, the sting of loneliness, and the struggle of desire in order to purify itself. Through this purification, the soul gradually becomes more aligned with the divine. It sheds its attachments to the world, its distractions, and its illusions of self-sufficiency. In this sense, every trial, every hardship, and every moment of longing is not an obstacle, but a step towards the beloved, a refining of the soul's capacity to love and to receive love. This process of returning to the beloved is also marked by a deep inner surrender. Just as the reed flute cannot play its melody without being hollowed out, so too must the soul allow itself to be emptied of its attachments and desires. The beloved does not come to us on our terms, but on his base. To return to the divine, we must surrender our sense of control, our will, and our understanding of what is best for us. This is not a passive surrender, but an active, conscious letting go of the ego's desire to shape its own path. As the soul surrenders, it opens itself to the presence of the divine, allowing the beloved to fill the emptiness that the soul has carried for so long. This is the great paradox of the spiritual journey. The more we let go, the more we are filled with divine presence. In this return, there is also a recognition of unity. The ultimate return to the beloved is not a return to something external, but a recognition of the beloved within. Rumi's teachings suggest that the divine is not separate from us. The beloved is the very essence of who we are. The soul's journey is not about seeking something out there, but about coming to a deeper understanding of the divine presence that has always been within us. This recognition transforms the soul's longing from something painful into something joyful. The soul comes to realize that it was never truly separate from the beloved. It was only temporarily veiled by the illusions of the material world. The return is thus not a long journey to a far-off place, but an awakening to the truth that the beloved has always been with us. In the teachings of Rumi, surrender is not a sign of weakness, but the highest form of strength. It is the ultimate act of freedom, because it frees the soul from the heavy burden of ego, desires, and attachments. In the material world, we are often taught that freedom comes from control, that the more we possess, the more power we gain, the more freedom we have. But Rumi flips this concept on its head. True freedom, in the spiritual sense, comes from surrendering to the divine, from relinquishing our illusions of control and trusting in the wisdom and guidance of the beloved. The reed, for example, is only able to produce its beautiful music because it has been hollowed out, allowing the breath of the divine to pass through it. Similarly, it is when we empty ourselves and let go of our need for control that we can become vessels for the divine's will. To surrender is to acknowledge that we are not the masters of our own fate, that there is a greater force at play, a force that is leading us toward a higher purpose. This is not a passive surrender, but a conscious act of letting go, a willingness to submit to the flow of life as it unfolds. Rumi often speaks of the soul's need to surrender to the divine like the reed surrenders to the wind. The reed does not resist. It does not fight the wind, but allows it to carry it wherever it wishes. Similarly, true spiritual freedom is found when we stop resisting the natural flow of life and begin to trust in the wisdom of the divine plan. The more we resist, the more we entangle ourselves in the web of suffering. The more we surrender, the more we align ourselves with the natural rhythm of the universe, where true peace and joy reside. Rumi's metaphor of the reed flute is crucial in understanding the profound depth of surrender as freedom. The reed is not just a passive instrument, it is an active participant in the music. By being emptied and surrendered to the breath of the divine, it becomes the channel for something far greater than itself. Surrender does not mean giving up. It means becoming an instrument of the divine. The reed does not lose its identity in the process of surrender. Rather, it gains a deeper expression of its true essence. When we surrender to the divine, we do not lose ourselves. Rather, we find our true self. The more we empty ourselves of our personal desires and ego-driven motives, the more we open ourselves to the true essence of who we are. Souls that are one with the beloved, capable of infinite love and wisdom. To surrender is also to embrace the unknown. In the material world, we seek certainty, control, and predictability. We want to know what lies ahead, to plan every step, and to have our futures mapped out. But spiritual surrender requires us to let go of the need for certainty and step into the mystery of life with trust and faith. Rumi compares the journey of the soul to a long and winding road, one where we cannot always see the path ahead. There is an inherent beauty in not knowing, in walking forward with only faith as our guide. True freedom, then, lies not in having everything figured out, but in the willingness to walk the path with uncertainty, knowing that the divine will always lead us where we need to go. Finally, Rumi's idea of surrender is deeply connected to the concept of trust in the divine will. The soul that surrenders is not a passive participant in life, but an active co-creator with the divine. It recognizes that its desires and will are ultimately aligned with a greater wisdom, even when that wisdom is not immediately clear. The reed flute cannot choose the tune it plays, but it trusts that whatever melody comes forth is the right one. Similarly, the soul that surrenders to the divine does not question the path it is being led down, but trusts that every step, every trial, every moment of suffering is part of the grand design. It understands that true freedom comes not from controlling life, but from aligning oneself with the flow of the divine will, from being in harmony with the divine breath that moves through us, just as it moves through the reed flute. In Rumi's world, longing is not a flaw to be fixed or an emotion to be extinguished. It is the very essence of our spiritual journey, a constant reminder of the soul's eternal desire to reunite with its source. The reed flute, with its song of separation, is a metaphor for the human condition, forever torn between the beauty of the world and the call of the divine. This longing is what pushes us forward, keeps us moving through life's trials, and in a strange way gives us purpose. But what Rumi teaches is revolutionary. The peace we seek is not found by eliminating longing, but by accepting it as a constant companion. True inner satisfaction arises not from the end of desire, but from the integration of desire with peace. Longing in the spiritual sense is not about a future gain or a distant promise. It is a present reality. The soul is always in a state of longing, yet this longing is not tormenting. It is not a source of constant dissatisfaction, but a wellspring of inspiration, of spiritual vitality. The person who learns to live with longing understands that peace is not a static state of contentment, but a dynamic state of acceptance. It is the quiet acknowledgement that we are both human and divine, that we both lack and possess everything we seek. We are eternally incomplete and eternally whole at the same time. This duality of experience is the nature of our journey, and to accept it brings profound peace. When we look at life through this lens, we realize that our desire for fulfillment is not something to escape or suppress, but something to be embraced. The longing for the divine, for self-realization, for connection with something greater than ourselves, gives our lives meaning. Without it, we would be like the reed without breath, an inert object, a hollow shell. But when we allow our desires and longings to coexist with our sense of peace, we begin to harmonize our inner world. Inner satisfaction does not come from external achievements or possessions, but from the alignment of our will with the divine will, from the quiet surrender of our ego and the joyful embrace of our spiritual path. The path to inner satisfaction is not easy, nor is it free from struggle, but it is worth every step. Just as the reed sings its sorrow and joy, our souls too are called to sing their own unique song. A song that resonates with the divine breath, a melody that brings peace not just to ourselves, but to the world around us. In our surrender, we find freedom. In our longing, we find union. And in our emptiness, we find fulfillment. This is the paradox and the beauty of Rumi's message, that through the process of becoming empty, we are made whole. And through the act of longing, we are united with the beloved. As you leave here today, remember that inner satisfaction is not something to seek outside of yourself. It is already within you, in your heart, in your soul, in your connection with the divine. It is waiting for you to recognize it, to accept it, and to allow it to flow through you. Just like the reed, which has been hollowed out to make room for the divine breath. May we too hollow ourselves out of the distractions and desires that keep us from our true essence. May we find peace in the longing, freedom in the surrender, and fulfillment in the divine presence that surrounds us always. Thank you for joining me on this journey of inner exploration. May the words of Rumi continue to inspire your path, and may you find the deepest satisfaction not in the world's fleeting offerings, but in the eternal love and peace of the divine.